Hello, we are going to speak today about the sodium reabsorption. The sodium reabsorption. In order to speak about the reabsorption of sodium, we have to speak about two items in that topic. The first item is the mechanisms of sodium reabsorption. Mechanisms of sodium reabsorption. And the factors that affect the reabsorption of sodium. So what are the mechanisms of sodium reabsorption? In the renal tubules, sodium is reabsorbed by different mechanisms and in different parts of the renal tubules. For example, in the proximal convoluted tubules, sodium is reabsorbed by some mechanisms. In the loop of Henle, sodium is also reabsorbed by specific mechanism. And the same is true for the distal convoluted tubules and the collecting duct. So the first mechanism of reabsorption of sodium is passive diffusion. So let's suppose together this is a part of renal tubule, and we have magnified this part to explain about it. This is the peritubular capillary. The red color diagrams here represent the peritubular capillaries, and we have magnified them here. And these are the tubular cells. We have magnified part of the tubular cells to explain them. And this is here the lumen. The lumen of the tubular structure. So the first mechanism of reabsorption of sodium is passive diffusion. After the filtration process is occurred, so in the lumen of the tubules, of the renal tubules, there will be large concentration of sodium ions. So one of the mechanisms of reabsorption of these sodium ions is throughout passive diffusion, depending upon the gradient in the concentration of sodium. So because of high concentration of sodium inside the lumen of the renal tubules, sodium will pass or diffuse to the lower concentration areas inside the renal tubular cells. The second mechanism is active transport. Note that we are speaking about the reabsorption of sodium in the proximal convoluted tube. So now we are speaking about the mechanisms of reabsorption of sodium in the proximal convoluted tubules of the renal tubules. So by active transport, sodium is reabsorbed in the proximal convoluted tube, and specifically by what is called sodium H exchanger. Sodium hydrogen exchanger or sodium hydrogen co-transporter. In fact, about 65 about 65% or 60% of the sodium is reabsorbed by this mechanism in the proximal convoluted tubules. The exchanger here is about specific protein, specific carrier protein, which exchange sodium for hydrogen. How is that? Let's suppose that inside the tubular cells there are what? Hydrogen. So hydrogen is exchanged for what? For sodium. And now sodium will enter to the intracellular structures of the renal tubular cells, and specifically in the proximal convoluted tubule, as exchange for what? As exchange for hydrogen. And this is done by specific protein or co-transporter or exchanger. We have to recall or to remind together the co-transport mechanism in terms of transport throughout the cell membrane. The co-transport mechanism, as you know, is about secondary active transport. In fact, it is not direct or primary active transport mechanism. Instead, it is what? It is a secondary active transport mechanism. Why is that? Because the inotropic energy of diffusion of sodium or diffusion of hydrogen will cause the transport of other ion, depending upon the inotropic energy of movement of one ion, not direct expenditure of the ATP from inside of the cell. However, the major mechanism of reabsorption of sodium in a proximal convoluted tubule, which is about 65%, occurs throughout this mechanism, throughout sodium hydrogen exchanger or co-transporter. And here the transport is called antiport. In addition to this mechanism of active transport of sodium, there is another mechanism, which is symport, where sodium is co-transported with glucose, or sometimes sodium is co-transported with amino acid. But in this case, sodium will be transported together in the same direction with glucose, for example, and by the help or assist or the aid of specific carrier protein, of course. But as you note here, that the direction of movement of sodium is with the same direction of glucose to enter the intracellular structure of the renal tubule cells. So it is called symport. So let's repeat that. Sodium is reabsorbed within the proximal convoluted tubules by first passive diffusion throughout movement or diffusion of sodium of high concentration area from the lumen of the tubules to the inside of the cells. The second mechanism is the active transport, and we have mentioned it's about a secondary active transport mechanism throughout an H exchanger or sodium hydrogen exchanger or transporter, and also by the symport throughout sodium glucose symport co-transporter. And also there is additional mechanism throughout the proximal convoluted tubule, patterning for the reabsorption of sodium, which is the chloride sodium driven force. So, according to this mechanism, when chloride diffuses to the intracellular structure of the renal tubules of the proximal tubule, sodium will follow. Then sodium will follow the chloride in order to what? In order to compensate for the electrical gradient, like a driven force by the negative charge of the chloride. So chloride, when diffused from high concentration area or filtrate from inside of the lumen to the inside of the intracellular structures of the renal tubular cells, sodium as a positive cation, positive charged ion, will follow the chloride. Here are the mechanisms by which sodium is reabsorbed in the proximal convoluted tubule. Now let's move to the loop of Henle. First of all, reabsorption of sodium in loop of Henle. The descending part or descending arm of loop of Henle, here, descending arm of loop of Henle, we have to focus here. In the descending arm of loop of Henle, there is no reabsorption for any solutes. So, reabsorption of sodium does not occur in the descending arm of loop of Henle. What about the ascending arm of loop of Henle? What about the ascending arm of loop of Henle? Note here that the ascending arm or part of loop of Henle consists of two parts. The thin part here and the wide part here or thick part. So this is